Welcome back to another episode of the Freelancers Tea Break, the short and sweet podcast you can enjoy whilst you're making a cuppa. Now, we're coming up to the time of year when lots of university students are approaching graduation and they're thinking about the future. And if that's you or someone you know and you want to explore freelancing as an option, then this episode is for you. And just a little spoiler, the title of this episode is Can a Graduate Go Freelance? The spoiler is absolutely, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. So let's kick off with some of the benefits of starting freelancing after graduation. So starting your freelance career as a graduate, it comes with several advantages. First of all, aside from your student loan, there's a good chance you have lower financial commitments. So it's less likely you've got a mortgage or dependents and things like that. You have fresh, up-to-date knowledge in your field and access to more of that as well. A lot of the universities offer some great resources around that now, much more than when I was at university. So I think that's a real plus point to be coming out with the freshest, newest information. There's also a good chance that your sort of digital native skills are going to be much higher, and this batch of graduates and probably the last few years, more than ever, are so digitally savvy because they had to study throughout lockdown and everything like that. So that's actually an advantage for you now, even though it probably didn't feel like it at the time. It really is now. There's also that kind of, as a graduate, sometimes you have more of that kind of flexibility to take risks and learn from mistakes and be a bit of a blank page, which is a wonderful thing to be. You'll also probably have lots of contacts and resources from your university graduate and alumni programs. Now, I know I work with, I do a few talks for universities about freelancing, and I'm blown away now by some of the entrepreneurship departments some of them offer, and I think it's much better than it ever was 10, 20 years ago. So there are a lot more tools available to you. And I know there are a lot of partnerships with some of the universities which will offer things like training or even like cheaper access to certain tools that will be able to help you as a business owner if that's what you want to do, want to go into. So there are certain things that sorts of challenges to think about really as a freelancer if you're going to be going into that from graduation. So I guess the biggest one is limited professional experience. So you may have worked through graduation, you may have worked through university, you may have worked before that, but within the business world, most graduates are not going to have a huge amount. That said, I mean, my own degree was a sandwich year degree where we had a year working in industry. So that's not always the case, and lots of people will have a lot of experience. But technically, some people will point at, you have less professional experience. Sometimes that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes not being in the kind of the corporate machine is actually much better. You'll have a lot more kind of creativity and be less stomped down, shall we say. So that's not always a bad thing. You might have less established network or a smaller established network of contacts in the working world. This is why it's quite important to get onto LinkedIn and start building that now and get those networks building already. And there's also going to be competition from more experienced freelancers, but that is always going to be the case. And actually, I personally, when I see freelancers start out, often in the first couple of years, they do much better because people are really keen to help them and support them, and people are willing to take a chance. And also, their rates are a bit lower because their experience is a bit lower. So they're potentially going to get more work that way initially. After about 2 years, then some people can kind of hit a bit of a brick wall. So that's usually when they need to up their rates to reflect their experience, but also look at other ways of finding clients rather than just referrals. So how do you make it work? I mean, there are so many different ways of making it work as a freelancer, but I think the kind of key things are start building up your portfolio now. There's no reason you have to wait until after graduation or there's any kind of set point. And there's loads of things that you can use to build up your portfolio. So if you don't know what a portfolio is, it's basically a record of all your work and like showcasing it so that people can see what you do and want to hire you based on that. And that varies depending on what you are going to be offering. So if you are someone who's creative, like a graphic designer, then that's going to be a body of work, examples of things like logos and brand designs, and or any kind of advertising or anything like that. If you're looking to look into something more of a consultancy or something where you're not necessarily going to have a visual example, that would be more testimonials, and that kind of thing. So you can gather work samples from things like university projects you've done, internships. Internships are a tricky one because I did an internship, which was expenses paid, but I now don't think people should do internships unless they are paid for their time. There's no need. So it's a tricky one and it's a judgment call, but I would push to be paid for your time. Just because you are less experienced in the business world doesn't mean you're not bringing lots of other talents to the role. If you do have some volunteer work, and that's not internship, but that's things like volunteering, maybe for charities and things like that, that could give you some work samples, and also any personal projects. So that could be, you say you're a photographer, that could be a photo shoot you've just done with friends or anything like that. So anything like that builds up your portfolio and gives you something to say to people, this is what I do, would you like to hire me? The next thing you can probably look at is look at doing this part-time. So do the freelancing, start to freelance a little bit now around your studies or around a part-time job. Or I know a few people who have taken a year out to travel but have freelance throughout that time, to kind of top up their income whilst they're traveling. So it's a really good way because then you've kind of still got that steady income coming in, but you can then build your client base on the side. And it also means you might get some industry experience, also some contacts. I've known a few people who have taken on jobs, part-time or full-time, left it to go freelance, and ended up being hired as a freelancer by that company. So it's a really good way of building connections that way. I think the third thing I would say is just really enjoy the freelancing buffet of options out there. When you leave university as a graduate, quite often you're kind of funneled into, let's get you a job. And it's almost like, let's decide now exactly what you want to do in the future, and this job is going to be it. Whereas freelancing allows you to try different things. So if you're someone that loves website design, you can try doing lots of different kinds of websites and see what works for you, rather than taking on a job where you're kind of then limited by what your employer wants you to do. So have a look at lots of different things, explore it, have fun, and just enjoy the buffet of freelancing, rather than putting all your eggs in one employed basket. If all this sounds really overwhelming, and I get it, it can feel a bit like, oh, I've just come out of like 3 or 4 years of studying, I'm exhausted, I don't have the energy to work out how to do all of this. I have put together a course called Graduate to Freelancer, and it walks you through all the steps. So you don't have to do any research. You just read through the steps, and if you want to do them, you can. It's just £49, and you can go find it at freelancelifestyle.podia.com, but I'll pop the links in the bio notes. But it covers everything from planning out what you want to do to landing clients, how to deal with clients, all that kind of thing. But I'm really passionate about this. It's why I am speaking to universities, because I think a lot of universities teach students about employment or about entrepreneurship / bricks and mortar businesses. And I think there is this middle ground of people who don't necessarily want to build, these £1 million businesses. I mean, there are plenty of freelancers who are doing that, but they may just want to be able to work on projects they love with people that they enjoy working with and have that freedom of choice and flexibility. Additionally, just like freelancing at any other point in your life, lots of people go into freelancing because they need the flexibility around caring for parents, caring for children, their own mental or physical health, or neurodiversity. I am someone with ADHD and anxiety myself, and freelancing has allowed me to have a career that I could never have had if I went into the employed world. And there are so many reasons why freelancing can be a brilliant flexible option. It requires a little bit more work to constantly find the clients and bring them in. But for me, that payoff is worth it. And I think for a lot of graduates, I think it could be a pretty incredible option. And also, the final point, you can freelance for a little bit and then go into a job, or you can go into a job for a bit and then go freelance. There's flexibility there. This is not a decision for the rest of your life. And I know you're probably being told lots of that at the moment, that everything now is the rest of your life. And that doesn't need to be the case. So if you want to have a check out the course, you can do. I actually have, I'm going to put in the notes as well, a freebie, which is a checklist of things to think about if you want to start your own freelancing business after graduation. So I'll pop that in there as well. And I hope you have a lovely freelance week. If you've got any questions, do feel free to drop me a line.